First off, my name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Prioritization. Today's webinar is focused on the introduction to Prioritization. So it'll be a good refresher for anyone who's used Prioritization in the past but want to learn about the latest features, or also anyone who's never been exposed to the product before. Why Prioritization? The number one reason why customers come to Prioritization is that they're overwhelmed with the number of emails they have, the number of tasks they have, and then they start losing track of their own personal priorities. And then at the same time, if you're overwhelmed with your own personal tasks, you might not know what your team members are working on. So understanding what the team priorities are and want to know that you're working on the right things and going in the right direction. And then thirdly, you can extrapolate that further and look at the whole organization. So if you want your organization to be more effective and align on key tasks, and making sure that everyone works on things that are important and urgent, those are the top reasons to come to Prioritization. So Prioritization provide a tangible, concrete way to prioritize the most important work for yourself, your team, and your organization. So one of the things I want to emphasize as you sit here through this webinar with me or watch this video later, one of the things I want to emphasize over and over again is that you should think of Prioritization as a way to communicate what's in your head to everybody else in terms of what's most important, and then a way for you to see what's important for everyone else. And so as you think about Prioritization and as you use it, make sure that that is an outcome that you see within your day-to-day workflow. My goals for today: help you understand the basics of Prioritization, help you become more effective and efficient at prioritizing tasks, projects, and emails, and then help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Prioritization. And then importantly, I want you to learn 20% of the features in Prioritization that would give you 80% of the benefits. And I will emphasize those features. So hopefully you take notes on that and really use the key capabilities in Prioritization to be more effective right away. And then I'll provide you some tips and tricks as you learn to use the software with either a few projects or a lot of projects. I've talked to thousands of customers over the past decades. I've seen every possible ways to use Prioritization and every single possible use cases. And then lastly, I want you to walk away feeling productive and have a strategy to be aligned with your team. Prioritization is a comprehensive email priority and project management software. At the individual level, what we do is we help you prioritize your tasks and emails. That's it, right? Just think about, how many things we have on our plate at any point in time, be able to get to the point and be able to understand these are the things that really would make an impact on my work at an individual level. That's what it does. But then as we help these individuals prioritize tasks, then you can actually go and see the common priorities across your team. And so being able to see what your team members consider to be their most important task, what your managers consider to be the most important task, or even what your clients consider to be the most important task, that actually helps create alignment across the team. And then as you use Prioritization more and more, what happens is that you end up building repository and knowledge across the priorities, across all these different projects and responsibilities that you have. So at the organizational level, one of the most amazing thing about Prioritization is that it helps you understand exactly what the priorities are in the past. And then if someone leaves the organization, you're able to take all those key priorities and pass it forward. And then similarly, if you're new to an organization, if that organization already uses Prioritization, you're able to understand exactly what the priorities are from the people before you. And so being able to get to that real quick is how Prioritization help at the organizational level. So what makes Prioritization better than any of the other solutions out there? It's the only project email and meeting management software that's Microsoft 365 security certified across Teams, Outlook, and web. So we're deeply integrated into the Microsoft ecosystem. That means in Microsoft Teams and Outlook, in Microsoft Copilot, and so many more things. But using Microsoft is not necessary. So Prioritization works completely independent of the Microsoft ecosystem. Prioritization also provide what I call people-centric collaboration. It's a very different perspective from just looking at projects and tasks. I'm sure you've used so many task and project management software where you're just looking at the things to do within every single project. Well, Prioritization is able to flip all that around and help you understand what are the things you have to do for a specific individual. The software is available as a standard SaaS solution, which is what I'll be showing. But also, if you're in healthcare and life sciences, we have the HIPAA compliant version. And then we also have an Azure Government Cloud version for state and local government. And then, of course, enterprise solutions as well. So Protomatrix offer one central place where everyone can go to know what needs to be done. And I guess that's our bread and butter, for lack of better words. You know, Protomatrix is really focused on priority management. And so I hope that, you know, when you think about Protomatrix and you think about all these other tools that you already use, that's the key difference, right? And then lastly, Protomatrix is very easy to get started. So hopefully what I'll be able to show you today is how you can use Protomatrix immediately today, right after this webinar. You can get started. You can start tracking your priorities. You can start prioritizing your emails. You can start capturing the things that needs to be done, your goals and so forth. But then as you use Protomatrix more and you expand from one project to 5 to 50 to 500 projects, we have all the capabilities that you need to provide value. So that's either at the individual level or the team or the organizational levels. Let's start with the fundamental concept behind Protomatrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Now, what I really like about this quote is that it helps us understand the differences between the type of tasks and action items that we get every single day. Let me give you an example. Let's just say this morning when you got up, you check your emails, right? And guess what? What email did you look at first? It's probably that last email that came in, right? And so that's an example of how something that's recent tend to overcome our need to actually work on something important. Is looking at your emails the most important thing? Likely not, but it's something that you feel is urgent. And therefore, we end up spending a lot of our time working on those urgent things, not necessarily because they're important, but it's because they're top of mind. So there's a concept called the Eisenhower Matrix. It's a very simple but powerful time management framework. And the idea is that instead of just working on a to-do list or a task list, you categorize all your action items into 4 quadrants based on the dimensions of importance and urgency. So what that means is, imagine I ask you to do a simple exercise. Imagine if you take out a piece of paper and write down the 15 things you have to do. Now take those 15 things and look at it and ask yourself a question: what should I work on first? Should I work on the things at the top of the list or bottom of the list? And then if you add something, do you add it to the top of the list or to the bottom of the list? So the challenges that we face over and over again in a list environment is that you tend to end up working on things like first things in, last thing out, or last thing in is first thing out, right? So instead, we break them up into 4 buckets. And then now every single one of those tasks, you ask the question: is this an important task? And then is this an urgent task? And so what we end up doing is we actually put the task into 4 distinct buckets. And so bucket 1, the important and urgent, those are the things you have to do now. Those are the fires you have to fight. And then the things that are important but not urgent goes in the plan quadrant. Those are the things that you should actually actively think about. So the moment that you have extra time and bandwidth, that's where you should focus your effort on. And then the things that are not important are the things perhaps you should delegate to others. And then lastly, everything else goes in the inbox. So the inbox is like your catch-all. So one of the suggestions I have for you and pretty much anyone else who wants to be more effective at time management is that don't have a list. Instead, break it down into these various categories and buckets to make sure that you understand how it fits within the larger context. Now, the Eisenhower Matrix is just one way of looking at your task list, right? You could look at things from the dimensions of how much effort, how much impact do I have? And so the idea around Protomatrix as a software is to take all of this and put it into practice. So the 4 quadrants Eisenhower Matrix is particularly effective is because it helps you and forces you to prioritize from the beginning. I think one of the biggest challenges I've seen people have over and over again is that they work on the wrong things. Now, you can put all your efforts and work so hard, but if it's not the right task, if it's not the right feature that your customers actually want, if it's not aligned with your company's vision, or if it doesn't help you fulfill your goals, then it doesn't matter, right? Why put so much effort working on the wrong things? So success from using Matrix is about discovering the agreement and discovering the disagreement, so that from the very beginning you work on the right things, and then you can figure out how much effort you should put into it. So that's one thing I want you to have a takeaway. Even if you don't use Matrix as a software, just make sure that the first key decisions are around what should I work on, and then how good of a job, how much effort should I put in, not the other way around. So a couple of tips as a way to shortcut your success, and now this applies to Matrix in particular. If you're a manager, make sure that you create a project for your team and staff meetings. And be able to screen share that during the meetings. That's what I think about when I think about Matrix. It's a way to have a tangible it's a way to tangibly communicate the priorities across your team, so then everyone can be on the same page at any point in time. If you happen to manage multiple sites or locations, that have a party matrix for each of those sites and each of those locations. If you have specific training programs or initiatives that are recurring, then use our template system. So then you can build recurring guidelines that actually incorporate priorities and deadlines all in one central place. If you're a business owner, then create a project for each of your departments. Or if you're a business unit owner, then you can actually have a project for each of the groups that you manage. And so then you can actually have one central place to see what are our priorities across marketing, sales, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you're an individual contributor, then create a project for your goal so that you can get your promotion or meet whatever success criteria that you have. Matrix itself is a very flexible software, right? And so with flexibility comes challenges. And so, what I want you to take away too is have some flexibility and also some open-mindedness around how you might use Matrix. At the end of the day, your success is the only thing that matters. If you're able to prioritize your tasks well, and if you're working on the right things, and your team members are working on the right things, that's it, right? You can achieve that however you want, and adapt Matrix to your particular needs. I do want to mention that the webinars are located on our website, affluence.com/webinars. So this recording, as well as all the previous recordings, are there. And then also I have different topics around email management, around templates, around reporting, and those are deep. We have deep dives into that you can watch if you want to go further into any of those topics. And then also it's available in other languages. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the product itself to show you how to put this into practice. So now you should be able to see my Matrix. And so this is my demo account. And let me walk you through the structure of Matrix first. As you can see, front and center are the 4 quadrants. So in Matrix, you don't just have a task list. Everything goes within these 2x2 matrices. Now they're completely customizable, but the most fundamental matrix is of course the Eisenhower Matrix. And you can see that I have the categories of do now, do later, and then not important, and then inbox. Now on the left-hand side are my projects. So this is my list of projects. As you can see in this demo account, I have a few dozen projects. In my actual work account, I have several hundred projects. One of the things I want to emphasize to you is that don't be scared of creating multiple projects in Matrix. The software does a really good job of aggregating that information together and surfacing the things that's important. So whenever you think of a project, think of it as something that's distinct. So what that means is that your personal priorities should be different from your team priorities, right? They're not aligned. So therefore they deserve different projects. And then of course, if you have an initiative that you're working on, maybe for this quarter or this month or this year, that itself deserves a different project, because those are different set of priorities. So if you manage 15 different manufacturing plants, well, guess what? Each of those plants would have different set of priorities, and so forth and so forth. So when you create projects in Matrix, just think that, do these priorities belong together, or are they distinct, and would different people be associated with them? So now within this project called My Personal Priorities, I have the 4 quadrants. And when I select the project, on the right-hand side are information around the project itself. So for example, this is the project name. If I star the project, it pops at the top of the list. So if you have more than 5 or 10 projects, then you might want to go and star projects that belong to the top of the list so you can find them a little bit easier. And then down here, you have members. So these are the people within every single project. Matrix give you granular control over whom should be in what project and whom gets to see the details within each of those projects. As an example, your personal priorities, maybe only you would be in it, or you have one for a team that you work with, or a particular client or customer you work with, and then there'll be different people in it. Anyone who's in a project will be able to see all the priorities within that particular project, and then that means they can edit it and so forth. Below that, you actually have the 4 quadrants. Now, Matrix is completely customizable. So what that means is I can actually click on the text here and change the quadrant name. I can even change the color as well of the quadrants. Now, the colors themselves don't actually matter in terms of software usage, but the colors is a nice way for people who are very visually organized to be able to categorize different types of things together. So maybe all your engineering projects are one color, all your marketing projects are another color, etc. Now, in terms of the quadrant names, you can see that do now, do later. In my opinion, you should always try to put quadrant 1 as the thing that are most important. So what that means is anything that's like important and urgent, or anything that's low effort, high impact, right? And so quadrant 1 is typically the focus of your attention. So when you name quadrants, just keep that in mind. And then I also always like to have quadrant 4 as my inbox. That's my catch-all. So when I create something, it should go in that particular quadrant. So now let's create an actual sample task. As I hover over every single quadrant, you can see that there's a little add item that pops up here. So I can click on that, and now I can say, follow up with webinar participants. So this is a task that I certainly would have to do. But one of the things I can do in Matrix is actually leverage what's called natural language. So I can say, due tomorrow, 2 p.m. Now, when I do this, I can click add, and when I do, it creates a task for me. But by using natural language, it actually sets the due date for me to tomorrow at 2 p.m. my local time. So if you use Matrix in a different time zone, guess what? The natural language would automatically figure it out and actually set the due date for you for tomorrow at 2 p.m. your time. One of the things I want to emphasize over and over again is the importance of setting due dates in Matrix. When we talk about importance and urgency, it is very difficult to track things that are urgent if you don't set due dates. So my advice to customers and to people who are using Matrix, new to Matrix, is that when you use Matrix, make sure you set due dates for anything that's important. And so that allows you to see where things are within the bigger picture. And Matrix is actually able to take all those due dates and so forth and help you see what your workload is like next week, the week after, next month, etc. So that is actually very, very useful information over time as you become more proficient at using Matrix. Now, after I created this task, on the right-hand side is what's called the item details. So the item details let me edit the information around the task. I can change what project it goes in. I can star a task, which would put at the top of the list within every single quadrant. And then I can even add an icon. So the whole idea around icon is to visualize, to add a little bit visual cue to the task itself. I generally recommend that you use something like the colors here, especially if you want to track whether things are on task, on schedule, or behind schedule, or if it's things related to travel, etc. Whenever you use an icon in Matrix, you can actually later on find those icons. So find all the tasks related to travel, find all the tasks that are behind schedule, etc. And then below that, you have owner. So at the individual level, of course, when you create a task, it just gets assigned to you. But if you're a manager and you have 5 or 10 direct reports and you want to make sure that the right people own the task, then you can click on here and change to a different person. My general advice around ownership is that make sure that everyone knows that they own the task and that they're assigned to that task. And as you can see here, what happens is that there can only be one owner. The reason is that if you want to make sure that the right people are doing the right job, then there should be clarity on exactly who owns that task. Customers have asked us to have multiple owners and so forth, and we've always come back saying no, because you want to make sure that there is true ownership and that there's one person who's the go-to. That person can go and coordinate as needed, but I do want to emphasize that as well. When you think about Matrix, it's important to understand who owns that task. Now, to the right of that, you have progress, efforts, and then you have the due dates, and then you have reminders. So what I mentioned that due dates is probably one of the most important features in Protomatrix. Well, reminders is actually the second most important. So when you use Protomatrix and you create tasks and you have a due date, there's a big difference between dates and reminders. Let me give you an example. Let's just say you have a really big project that's due in 2 weeks, and that project's going to take you, 5 days to do, five days of work hours to do. If you wait until the due dates, there's no way you can get that done. So you want to make sure that you have a reminder in place to remind you that to get started ahead of time. But there's a second reason to use reminders, which is to bring something that's important to top of mind. Now, let me explain. Let's just say if you have a goal for the year, right? We talk about goals all the time. It's October now. So come January, everyone's going to have New Year goals. Guess what happens? When in January, when you have your first New Year goals, you're very excited about it. So you're thinking about it. But then February comes around, then guess what? There's a lot of new stuff that's top of mind, and suddenly you're starting to forget the goals that you set in January. And then by March, you haven't thought about your goals at all. And then by April, it's completely gone. And that, in my opinion, is one of the top reasons why people fail to fulfill their goals whenever they set them. And it's not because they mean to not do them. It's because other priorities are coming in, and it's always that last thing in that's top of mind for us, right? Just think about your emails. Just think about your phone. You get so many spam emails, so many spam messages. People ask you so many different things. And guess what? You have something that's important in the back of your brain, but it's being pushed back further and further as all these new things come in. So by using reminders, it becomes top of mind again. So let me give you an example here. If I set this due date for tomorrow, 2 p.m., that's great. Likely I'm going to do it. But what happens is I have 15 other things I have to do between now and then. So I might not remember. So I'm going to go ahead and say, remind me daily here. So I'm going to type this in the message in the chat box here. And now Protomatrix again uses natural language. Now it's going to set me a daily reminder until I get this task done. So if tomorrow I end up missing this particular task, guess what? I'm going to get a daily reminder for this very important task to make sure that I get it done until this is actually finished and I mark it as completed. So that's the key differences between due dates and reminders, right? Due dates is put in your calendar. Reminders is make sure it's top of mind. So I'd strongly, strongly recommend that you use these two features for anything that's important. It is so powerful and so useful as a way to trick our brain to make sure that we work on the right things. When I have to follow up with customers, I would say something like due in 1 month and then remind me monthly. So then if I miss that follow up, guess what? It's going to come back again over and over again until I get that. Now, when you work with multiple people, you might want to remind not just yourself, but you want to remind everyone. So then you can say, remind everyone daily. So if you have a very important task, don't just set a reminder for yourself, set a reminder for everyone who's involved within the task itself. Now below that, you have the chat, which as you can see is where I can communicate with other people. So it's very important to have a conversation within the context of the task. Let me give you an example. I'm sure you use Microsoft Teams or Slack or so many different chat software, and you and your coworkers might talk about many different things. The problem with that is that later on, when you need to go back and review the history of your conversation, it's not within context. It's all over the place. You've talked about 10 different things. So in Protomatrix, you have a chat for every single task. And so that gives you a place where you can communicate with each other. But the chat also serves another purpose, which is to track the history of all the changes for this particular task. What I've just created here is something that's very simple, right? Just follow webinar participants. But imagine if it's a much more complex task, then when I need someone else to take over, they can actually be assigned the task. They can go in, look at the chat, and see the full history. So they can see how it was created, who created it, what are the due dates, what are the changing due dates, what are the subtasks that's created, and so on and so on. So when we talk about how Protomatrix helps at the team and organizational level, the context here provides the information that people need in order to ensure that you have a really smooth transition. Then you have the notes, which is where you can create subtasks as well as bullet points or just basic information on the task itself. And then you have the resources section, which is where you can attach files, documents, links. So Party Matrix allows you to actually create tasks from emails, which I'll show you shortly. And so you're able to take an email and prioritize it. And when you do that, the email itself would be uploaded here in the resources section. Or you can actually link Party Matrix to other tasks. And so you can click on this option and actually you can link Party Matrix to other tasks. And then you can actually also build dependencies that say this task is blocked by this task and this task is caused by this task and so forth. So if you're a project manager, Party Matrix actually help you build dependencies and Gantt charts and so forth just from basically linking them together here. So that's the basic of a task. That's the basic of a project. And now let me switch gear a little bit and talk about email management. So email management is probably the number one reason why customers come to Party Matrix. If you're like me, you get a lot of emails. So I get maybe 100 emails per day. And guess what? Most of those emails aren't important, but for the most important ones, sometimes what the challenge I face is I want to make sure that I prioritize those emails and I want to make sure that I respond to those emails by specific dates. Let me explain the challenge in general. If you have a really important email, guess what? You can flag it, right? And I'm sure many of you guys do that. You flag the emails, and then you can mark the emails unread. But if you have 50 flag emails, then you're going to start losing track of that as well. And just as I mentioned around the difference between due dates and reminders, guess what? Just flagging the emails is not sufficient to get those recurring due dates or those recurring reminders. So here's an example. Let's just say I get an email. And so now from this email, for some reason it's not opening. So let's just say from this particular email, I want to make sure that I prioritize the email. So with Party Matrix, I'm able to use Outlook and use our add-in called Turn Emails into Task. And then I can actually choose to prioritize the email. And when I choose to prioritize the email, pop-up comes up on the right-hand side, and it allows me to capture this email as a task. Now, there's a couple things that is unique in Party Matrix. First of all, I can actually change the name of the task itself. So it uses the subject of the email as the initial item name, but I can modify that. I can actually choose what project it goes in. So as an example, let's just say if you get an email and it's someone requesting a quote, right? Well, guess what? You can actually put it in the project related to sales lead or quotes or invoices, etc. So every single person who uses Party Matrix for Outlook can actually put the emails in the right context. And then not only that, you can choose what quadrant it goes in. So when we talk about prioritization, you want to make sure that your most important emails are put in the right project in the right quadrant. And then not only that, I can actually assign the email to another person, and then I can set a due date. So instead of just flagging the email as marking the emails as unread and flagging it, what I'm doing now is I'm actually prioritizing the email, creating all the tasks, putting the right project in the right quadrants assigned to the right people and the due date from Outlook itself. And then I can click capture email. And once I do, the right-hand side show me what's just like the item details. And so here I have all the information that you saw earlier related to a task, including who's the owner, and then if there's any due dates that shows up right here, and then I can go ahead and say remind everyone weekly. So now I've set a weekly reminder for my most important emails to ensure that I actually get to these emails and respond to them at the appropriate time. So this is far more effective than actually just marking the email as unread. But one of the unique features in Party Matrix is the ability to actually attach emails to existing tasks. So let's just say you get a follow-up email from a customer. Instead of actually just, again, creating a new task from that, you can go to Party Matrix here, and then you can open Party Matrix. And now you can actually search for the appropriate task and then attach the email to an existing task. And so you see how I can actually hover over any task and then attach it. So now what I've done is actually I can organize all my information in one central place. So with Party Matrix, in the resources section, it could include multiple emails, links to SharePoints, link to Dropbox, OneDrive, linked to your documents. You can have uploaded drafts, et cetera, et cetera. So Matrix is able to bring all that together in one central place. So then anyone who's working on a particular task will know exactly what's related to it and able to access everything that's important. One of the unique features of Matrix, though, is the ability to actually forward an email into Matrix. So for me personally, I use the iPhone and I see a lot of important emails while I'm on the phone. Of course, I use Apple Mail, so therefore I don't have the Outlook integrations, but with Matrix, I can get what's called my inbox address. So I'll show you how that works. So when you go back to Matrix here and you go to the inbox, you have what's called a secret inbox address. So you can click on here and you can copy that email address. So this is one of the suggestions that I have for you to set up. Take that inbox address and create a contact in your email software. Now, the neat part about this is it could be in Outlook or it could be in Gmail. So I'll show you how that works. Let's just say I'm on my phone, right? And I get a very important email. So what I'll do is instead of actually just leaving it as unread, I'll forward it to my inbox address. And so here I'll copy that inbox address here. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, important email. And then I'm going to go ahead and in that email, I'm going to say due tomorrow, remind me weekly. So now what I've done is I can actually create a task by just forwarding or generating a whole new email to Matrix, and I click send. And that's it. So when I'm on my phone, Apple Mail or any other mail software, whenever I get an important email, I just click forward, and then even in the body of that email, I can type those commands that you saw earlier. So I highly recommend that, if you spend a lot of time on emails, set that up, copy your inbox address, save it as a contact, and then that would work no matter what software, what email system you use. And then not only that, you can actually build automatic forwarding system as well. The other neat thing about Matrix is that every single project also has its own email address. So when you go to a project, one of the things you can do up here is actually get the secret email address. So that is useful if you have a lot of projects and you have a lot of emails that you need to bring into specific projects. So once you set that up, you can actually build rules to ensure that all these most important emails are prioritized. So when I talk about prioritization, of course, the most important thing to figure out is how do you figure out what to work on at any point in time. So when you use Matrix, there's something called the home view. So the home view has a couple of different tabs that you can open. The first is the alerts. So when we talk about a task with due dates or reminders, when those get triggered, then the alerts, those tasks get shown up here in the alert section. So when you start your day and you open Matrix, where you should spend your time is looking at the alerts to see what tasks are relevant to you and what tasks do you need to spend your time looking at. As you can see, I can actually click on each of these tasks and then see what changed and so forth. So when we talk about those recurring reminders, guess what? Every time those recurring reminders trigger, they show up here in the alert section, allowing you to have top of mind that it's something that you need to work on. So if you forget, it's okay. It's not a big deal. It'll come back up again. And then here in the home view too, I can go to my agenda, and my agenda show me the tasks that I have to do today, tomorrow, and then not only that, it shows the things that I missed yesterday and the things that are overdue. So in this view, it actually aggregates all my tasks across all of my Matrix, and I'm able to see exactly what I need to work on. And then not only that, I can go to my items, and it shows me all the tasks that I have across all of my Matrix, regardless whether or not I have due dates or not. So that's why I mentioned you don't have to be worried or you don't have to be scared of creating projects. Create the project that you need and then leverage these other views that we have in order to find what it is that you need to work on. Now, when I go to a project in Matrix, I talk about the quadrants over and over again, but Matrix also let me see that information in different views. So for example, I can go to the list view. Now it's the same data, but it's shown in more like an Excel sheet, and I can sort these. So you can see it's a very useful view for me to see what are the tasks that's overdue because they turn up red here. And so if you work with a lot of tasks that have due dates on it, then the list view helps you spot those real quick. And then not only that, you can sort by owner and so forth. And then I have the Kanban view, which actually shows me the tasks that are in progress versus the tasks that are done. So again, it's the same information from the same matrix, but displayed in different format that lets you see where it is that you need to spend your time. And then I have the calendar view, which shows me all the tasks with due dates on it. And then not only that, I can click on these tasks and I can drag and drop them very easily. So if you have a lot of tasks with different due dates, then this is a very useful view for that. And then if you have a lot of tasks that are spanning across not just weeks, but months and years, then the Gantt chart view, which is also called the timeline view, allow you to see information for years to come. So if you're a project manager and you're working on something that spans across, 2 or 3 years, Protomatrix actually give you also this view as a way to see where things are within the larger perspective. So I want to emphasize here that Protomatrix is not just about making sure that you're tracking things in the 2x2 matrix. It's about organizing the information so then you can see the things that are important, the things that are urgent, and then the things that you should think about far into the future. So when you explore Protomatrix, check out these other views to see which view is suitable for your specific workflow. And the nice thing is every project has these views, right? So in some cases, you want to use the quadrant view, but in other cases, you want to use the calendar view, and that's completely up to you. Now, when I'm gonna look on the left-hand side here, and what I've shown you here are these views on a per project basis. But we also have what's called global views across all of your Protomatrix. So for example, I can go to the calendar view here, and this is the global calendar view, which lets me see everything I have to do across all of my matrices. So when you're in an environment where you're working with a lot of other people and you're working on so many different projects, so many different kind of tasks, so many different levels of priorities. When you go to the calendar view here, you can see all of that and everything that has due dates. And then you're able to actually click on filter, and then you can say, what are all the things that I have to work on, right? And so this shows you everything you have to work on across all of your projects. But you can actually also change this, and then you can actually change this and say, what are all the things that my coworker is working on here. So here I can select a different person. And so now this allows me to see, essentially narrow down and see the workload for each of my coworkers. So if you're a manager, you might want to know what are the things that person A is working on, person B is working on, person C is working on, not just for today, but across all of their different projects. And then not only that, I can actually also focus on the priorities too. If you use Protomatrix and you're tracking the most important task in quadrant 1, and then the next most important task in quadrant 2, then you can actually go to here and just change to the specific quadrants, and then the specific filter, such as items that are finished, unfinished, etc. And then you're able to actually see what are all the things that are high priority for Eugenia within specific set of projects, and you can see all of that in one central place. And so Protomatrix actually let me also select specific projects that I want to filter as well. So as you use Protomatrix more and you have a lot of tasks and a lot of projects, we're able to actually surface up whatever information it is that you need, regardless of what project it's in and who's it assigned to. So this gives you really good clarity and visibility and transparency across your team. And then we have what's called the search view. So the search view essentially lets you find information across all of your Protomatrix, regardless of what project it's in. And then you can click on the filter and essentially choose whatever information you need. But there's one neat feature about this, which is the ability for you to build custom filters. So as an example, let's just say on a quarterly basis, you want to build a report of all the work that you've worked on, right? That's very, very straightforward. So Protomatrix lets you do that by selecting yourself as a user. And then you can say, show me all the things that are finished by you. And then what all the things that are finished, and then group by projects. And so when I do something like this, I can actually save this as a filter. And then I click save here. And now on a quarterly basis, I just go to here, click on that filter, and I have all my information. And then I can print or export this out to send to my manager or whoever it is that needs that information. Similarly, you can actually generate this report for your direct reports to see what they worked on. So this is one way to get visibility across your team. And then on the global view, we also have the Gantt chart here, which shows you not only the things that are due within a specific project, but across all your projects. And so again, this gives you visibility for years to come, things that are due in 2027, 2027, 28, and then gives you that complete visibility of your workflow across all of your projects. And then the last view I want to show you here is what's called the one-on-one view. So when you go to the one-on-one view, this is that people-centric view that I mentioned. So when you go to one-on-one, instead of actually selecting a project, you select a person. So let's just I'll give you an example. Let's just say if you have 5 direct reports that you work with, and then whenever you have a one-on-one meeting, guess what? You just go to Matrix, select one-on-one, select the person, and now you can see all the tasks that you and that person have in common across all of your Matrix. And then you're able to go and quickly go through the tasks that are open, the things that are overdue. And then you can actually click on the task and reassign them, change the priorities, change the due dates. And so suddenly your meetings are so much more efficient and effective because you don't have to waste time asking questions like, what are you working on, right? Or what's blocking you? Or what are the things that's falling behind? Because you can actually open this up and then you can have a conversation together with all the information right there in front of you, and you can actually truly focus on the most important tasks. One of my advice in general to managers is to make sure that, if you have your direct reports, you don't overload them with work. I mean, if you have 60 hours worth of work in a 40-hour work week and everything is important and urgent, there's no way they can get that done. So by using the one-on-one view and by using all this information that we have available to you, you can actually see and ensure that people are not overloaded. And to get clarity on that, you could go to what's called workload management here. And now you're able to see all your fellow employees and then how many tasks they have on any given day in the coming weeks. And then you can even see how much effort hours or how many schedule hours they have. And all of this is pulled from Matrix. So as you use Matrix more, these reports become more and more useful for you as a way to make sure that you have good, proper resource and workload management. Now I'm going to switch gear real quick and jump to Microsoft Teams. If you happen to use Microsoft Teams, then make sure that you use Matrix in Microsoft Teams as well. It's almost a no-brainer in that case. So when you go to apps here, you can install Matrix and then you can pin it on the left-hand side. And now you can access the entire Matrix application within Teams. So you don't even have to go to a web application. You don't have to go to a desktop application. You could just have it right here at your fingertips. There's a couple of neat features inside Teams, though. So Matrix is probably one of the most integrated software within the Teams ecosystem. So when you select an individual, one of the things you can do is you can open the one-on-one view with that person inside Teams. So the way you do that is you click on this plus here and then choose Matrix and then choose one-on-one. So what this allows you to do is actually for each of your direct report that you talk to all the time in Teams, you can have this one-on-one view, and then you don't have to go to Matrix, open the one-on-one and select the person. Instead, it's populated here for you. And now whenever you have a conversation with somebody, just click on this tab and you can see all the tasks you have in common with them directly within Teams. And then if you have to create tasks, you can just click on add share task. It automatically assign the task to the other person, automatically add you as a follower. So then you get updates on it. And then you can even choose what project it goes in. So if you have a meeting and you're talking about all these things you want to do, the biggest challenges people have is just writing that down, right? How often has it been, you probably had experiences like this where you have a meeting, you talk about 5 or 10 things you want to do, and then guess what? No one wrote it down. And then 2 weeks later, you talk about it and nothing was done. So by using Matrix, you can have that meeting, you can have that conversation. You can just click on add share task here, and then be able to go and create that share task, set a due date directly from the task name using natural language inside this view. And then what happens is when you talk to somebody in Teams, one of the things you can do is you can actually just click on the conversation itself and then create a PM action item. So I use this sometimes where I'm talking to a coworker and then we're saying, hey, we should do this and this and this. Well, guess what? I can actually just click on that conversation in Teams and create the task directly and then assign to that person as needed. So I don't even have to open Protomatrix, find a project, create a task, assign to the person, etc. So we can skip that entire process, and it's very, very straightforward, and it'll save you a ton of time and effort. And it's all around making it easy for you to do the things you need to do within the proper context. And then as you can see here, I can actually even send Protomatrix action items too. So I'm able to actually open up Protomatrix here, and I can search for Protomatrix tasks and send those tasks directly to my coworkers. So it's a way, again, to also surface up important action items from Protomatrix into Microsoft Teams, into Outlook, etc. If you use a lot of Teams channel, you're actually able to also incorporate Protomatrix projects as tabs within each of those Teams channel. So for example, if you have a marketing team, right, within Microsoft Teams, then you can add the marketing project as a tab here. So again, it makes it very easy for you to actually access the priorities that you need without having to open Protomatrix software. And then the last thing I want to show you in Teams is actually our chat bot. So if you install our chatbot, and again, to do that, you simply click on plus here, get more apps, and then choose Protomatrix. And then what happens is Protomatrix actually has a chatbot where it actually sends you those reminders and those due dates, right? So we talk about making sure that you're aware of the most important tasks. Well, that's what the chatbot does. It sends you those messages to say, hey, you have a due date for this task. Hey, someone assigned you something. But not only that, Protomatrix actually let me go and talk to it using natural language. So if you click on view prompts here, I can say, what should I work on today? And then I can send that to Protomatrix, and Protomatrix will actually process that information and send you a response with the task that you need to work on. Guess I don't have to do anything today in my demo account. But Protomatrix also integrate with Microsoft Copilot. So if you use Microsoft Copilot, the AI software in Teams, you can actually pull Protomatrix action items as well. There's a lot more features that I'm not showing you in our integrations, but we have everything from connectors that lets you pull in tasks from planners, Azure DevOps, and we have workflow automation to create if this then that automations, and then also we have Chrome and Edge extension. But those are the most basic features I wanted to show you today with respect to Protomatrix. I think that I'm going to go ahead and jump back to my presentation here. Things I want to mention, first of all, if you use Microsoft Teams and Outlook, then make sure that you install Protomatrix for those systems. If you don't use Teams and Outlook, then go and get our software for Mac, Windows, or use our web application. And then at a personal level, make sure that you create a project to highlight your top priorities. I think that's actually a very important thing to do, which is make sure that you personally track your priorities. That's the most important part. I mean, I want you to be successful first and foremost. Whether your team uses it, whether the organization uses it, those are secondary, right? If you're able to use Protomatrix and track your tasks, so then you start your day, you can look at it and say, okay, you know what? These are the important and urgent things I need to work on. Then I think you'll get a lot of value out of it. Make sure you set those due dates and reminders. I can't emphasize that enough. For me personally, due dates and reminders are the two things I use constantly for every single one of my tasks that truly require my attention. Because there's just too many things going on. You know, I get so many different tasks, so many comments, so many conversations that I'm in. If I don't set those recurring reminders for my most important tasks, I will lose track of them. And, you know, even for emails, just marking them as unread or use something like reminders on the email that comes with Gmail or with Outlook. It's just not sufficient. It's those recurring reminders, putting them in the appropriate, you know, quadrants within the appropriate projects. That helps me stay on top of my emails. And then if you're successful with Protomatrix and you're tracking your priorities, ask your coworkers to do the same. One of the things that I can sort of ask you to visualize is imagine walking down the office and be able to see a floating 4 quadrants above every single one of your coworkers, and it shows you their priorities. That's the magic of Protomatrix, right? All our priorities are in our head. We know what we have to do. We know what we should do. And each of our coworkers have the same experience. But what happens is by using Matrix, you make it explicit. You're actually tracking that information. You put it into quadrants. It's structured. It's tangible. And so when you open up Matrix, you can go to their project and see their priorities. You can go to your manager's project and see their priorities, and they can see your priorities. And having that visibility is where all the magic happens. And then on a weekly basis, sit down and compare notes. As I mentioned to you earlier, the worst thing you can do, or the worst thing that can happen to anyone, is they spend all their time and effort working on the wrong things. So therefore, you shouldn't be spending time asking whether or not you're doing a good job. You should be spending time asking whether or not you're working on the right things. Some advice: make sure you use Matrix to track high impact tasks. I think if you're very proficient at Matrix, then you can use it to track, very, very simple things. But at the same time, if you're very new and you're worried about, being overwhelmed and so forth, then use Matrix to track things where you have to make a decision, right? The question is, if you have a task, can you make a decision whether or not to do it? And so that's when you use Matrix. And then always think of Matrix as a communication tool with your manager and your team members. And so all you're doing is you're communicating to everybody else what your priorities are and asking everyone else to communicate their priorities to you. And then I strongly encourage everyone to create a project for your personal goals, especially, with the end of the year coming up and now you're thinking about your next year and so forth. Make sure that you track your personal goals in Matrix. Every goal that you have that are truly important, set recurring reminders. You don't even have to set a due date. You just say, remind me monthly. And then on a monthly basis, Matrix will remind you of your goals. And so I really like that feature. And then set due dates, again, for your most important tasks. And then for those who are actually worried about time investment in the software, then all you have to do is set 1 hour, either at the beginning of the week or the end of the week, dedicated to reviewing your priorities. And if you communicate with your manager, if you have a meeting with your manager, the first thing you do is open up your Matrix and talk about your priorities on your matrix. And then if they assign you things, you can say, hey, by the way, I know you're assigning me this, but tell me what I should give up, right? If everything's important and urgent, then nothing is. So keep that in mind as you assign tasks to others as well. Make sure that you're aware of their workload, aware of their priorities, because if you're asking everyone to drop everything every single time to do all the things that you ask, nothing is going to get done. What success should look like on a personal level: you should check Matrix every single week to remind yourself of your goals. You have one central place to track all your priorities. And then on a team level, everyone on your team understands and are aligned on key tasks, and that your important emails are prioritized and delegated to the proper team members and not forgotten. And then being able to see everyone's priorities in real time asynchronously. I think that that last point is actually even more important in larger organizations, or if you work with a lot of remote team members across different time zones. You don't want to have a meeting just to be aligned. You want to be able to open your Matrix at the time of your convenience and see what everyone's priorities are, and then just have a conversation within the appropriate task. That's it. That's all I have for the introduction to Matrix. As I mentioned, there's other deep dive into specific topics around workload management reports, around email management, etc. So feel free to check out the other webinars there. If there's any questions right now, feel free to send in the chat and I'd be happy to address them.